Well, let's start with the good news. The good news is I'm house hunting. Yay! The bad news is I have to unhaul some books. I just want to give a huge thank you to my patrons. Thank you for making it able for me to pursue my passion. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizard of the Reads, and as always guys, I am Andrew, and today, I have got a massive unhaul. But before we get into that unhaul, make sure you're liking and subscribing, hitting that bell notification so you can get regular updates for when I put out new content. Also, make sure you're checking that description box down below for the link to the Wizardly Duo Discord, as well as links to all my social media, including information about my Patreon, where I do quarterly giveaways, weekly reading wrap-ups, and other general bookish content. Now guys, I am house hunting, and that means I don't want to move all of these books. Like, don't get me wrong, I love all of my books, but hard choices have to be made, and some sacrifices also have to be made. And so I went through my entire collection, and I found about 50 books that I could live without. So let's go ahead and get started with these three right up top. Oh, it's a rockin'. So starting out, I've got this on Audible. I've got a box set of the first three books on Audible, and I don't see myself collecting, I think this is a rather long series, and I don't have room on the shelf right now to really see about collecting these. Now, if I ended up loving it on audio, I may repurchase this book. But for right now, we're going to start out with The King's Ranger by A.C. Cobble. I do have audio copies of the first three, so I don't need this singular first entry in to be on my shelves. I don't need to move it. I don't want to pack it up. And this one kind of stinks because it's more of a urban fantasy horror that I found at my local half-price books, and I was super excited to read it. And then over time, I walk by it, and I walk by it, and I walk by it, and I never, ever think, maybe today's the day I'm going to pick that up. And so we have got The Obsidian Heart, and that starts with The Wolves of London. We have got The Obsidian Heart Book 2, The Society of Blood, and Wraiths of War. All three of these I've had on my shelf now 4 months, and I've never once had the thought of, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pick that up. And one of these was a gift from a longtime viewer of the channel who is a lot of fun to talk with. And I'm just like, I'm so sorry. There are going to be some gifts in here that are just, I don't have room anymore, or I have access to them via Scribd or something of that nature. And frankly, I just don't think I'm going to be able to get to this particular trilogy before 2025. And so I was like, I might as well just move it on to somebody else who's going to enjoy it more. Now this one's going to hurt. I might get some table flippers at this one. I am going to unhaul 3 Janie Wirtz books, and that's specifically because I don't want to read these in mass market paperback. I would rather read these on a Kindle, where I can control the size of the font, because the books are huge. That is Curse of the Mistwraith, The Ships of Merrier, and Wars of Vostmark. I love these editions. These editions are gorgeous. This is a series that I am going to read. I think I'm just going to read it on Kindle, because the hardcovers are incredibly hit or miss, incredibly difficult to find. And these mass market paperbacks are also a little bit difficult to find. I went to go buy the 4th book, and it's just out of print, or it's currently unavailable for order. And I want my editions to match. And also, I don't need just a whole shelf being taken up by mass market paperbacks of a series I haven't even started. And so the Kindle takes up no space other than the, one very small novella type of size. That Kindle's very small. And so I'm just going to go ahead and let these go and hope that, I can get all the ebooks and enjoy the story that way. Now, these are longtime copies that I don't really talk about a whole lot. We've got Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. We've got The Relic. This is the kind of movie edition. The movie came out in 1990. It was terrible, but the book was great. We've got Reliquary, and we've got Still Life with Crows. These are 3 of the Pendergast books. I've read probably Still Life with Crows, I think, 3 times. And I've read Relic and Reliquary 4 or 5 times a piece. If I end up reading these again, I'll just pick up new mass market paperbacks, because these are kind of in rough shape. And so if I'm going to pick it up again, I'm going to pick it up on mass market in a newer kind of condition, just so I can enjoy it and not have to worry about the book falling apart as I'm just sitting there reading it. Yeah, this is just, it's not in the best of shape. I mean, look at that spine. This poor book has been through the ringer with me. This is, of course, before I was collecting books and things of that nature. All right, starting off, we've got A Cell Swords Companion by Jacob Peppers. This is like a 7-book series that I only have the first book in, and it's available on Kindle Unlimited, which I've restarted my Kindle Unlimited subscription. So some of these I'm just like, if I have access to it on Kindle Unlimited, and I've only got the first book, then why would I go out and buy the other 6 books without even having tried the series yet, when I can do Kindle Unlimited, and then if I fall in love with it, I can pick it back up again. Guys, I am notorious for this, where I'm like, you know what, I don't need it on my shelf right now, and then I'll rebuy it after I've changed my mind, like a crazy person. All right, these two I got off of Book Depository a while ago, and then I've waffled on them. We've got Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu. This is an urban fantasy set in Edinburgh. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. But I love the cover. I love the concept. But again, it's one I never reach for whenever I've got an opening in my TBR. And lately, something that really made me think is I was recently on a sprint with Alan from the Library of Alexandria. And he kind of challenged me a little bit. He goes, Andrew, don't you mostly just read self-pub anymore? And I'm like, yeah, it's more of like a 70-30, 80-20 split, and I've got all this traditional fantasy that is just sitting here languishing on my shelves when they could be in, a new home, bringing joy to another reader. And so I'm really starting to focus in on my self-pub, and I mean, there are still traditional fantasies that I love, but I just don't have any room in my TBR to get to these style of books. And so the next up we're getting rid of is Helm of Midnight by Marina Lostetter. This is like a medieval horror fantasy. And other than that, I don't know anything about it. I know there was something about a serial killer, and I've never reached for it. And so I'm going to go ahead and let it go, because I don't see myself starting that series anytime soon. Like, even with unhauling 80 books, and I've unhauled like 100 books in the last 3 months, and I'm still so far behind on my TBR that, like, I barely feel the dent. So, I mean, I've got to make space for stuff that I want. I feel a drive and a need to read. Now, this was kindly gifted to me by my good friend Sharon Dwyer, and this is Infinite Stars, Dark Frontiers, and this is just a anthology of space operas. We've got stuff from George R.R. Martin, Becky Chambers, Robert Heinlein, Jack Campbell, Tana Huff, Shawnee McGuire, Orson Scott Card, Neil Asher, and more. And I've read a lot of stuff from a lot of these authors, or I've heard of them. I just don't really read a lot of collected bind-ups, so I have no idea when I would get to this. And so I'm going to go ahead and say thank you, Sharon, but I'm going to pass this on to a new home, just because I don't want to pack it up. All right, these 3 are going because I read the first book months ago, and I felt no desire to return to it. Like, I thought that these would be great palate cleansers, and they are. They are funny, they are engaging, but it sounds like, as I'm reading the back of, like, books 2 and 3, it just sounds like a lot of rinse or wash and repeat. So, like, this is going to be the Dragon Lord's Fool's Gold. I read this, I did a dedicated book review on it. I love this book. It was fun and great. But then you get to the second book, and it's just like, oh, there's more dragons for them to fight. It's like, okay. So it's just going to be more shenanigans and more outlandish situations. And then it's Bad Faith, where it's like, oh, well, now we need to recruit the dragons because the gods got involved because we pissed them all off. And that's just going off of what's on the back of the books. And, I mean, that just doesn't sound super engaging to me. Maybe I'm going to regret this decision, but I don't think so. I'm not reaching for a lot of humorous books anymore. I've actually been falling out of love with, like, The Hitchhiker's Guide. I've been falling out of love with Discworld. And so I think I need to figure out where my tastes are currently lying, and then I can kind of decide where I'm going from there. Now, this one hurts. Mainly because I'm mad at Tor for just absolutely botching the cover art of the new book. And that's Last King of Osten-Ard here. I plan on doing these on audio, but, like, because I did Memory of Sorrow and Thorn. You can see these aren't going anywhere, and I've got my Otherland books up top. Those aren't going anywhere either. But, like, I mean, I don't mind The Brother of the Wind because it was a novella and it wasn't a main book. But when you've got covers like Empire of Grass and The Witchwood Crown, and then you do something like this Into the Narrow Dark, and it's not even remotely close, you lost me. And I don't want that kind of inconsistency in my collection on the shelf. If I wasn't going to let the Dandelion Dynasty get away with it, I'm not going to get The Last King of Ostenard, which I haven't even started, get away with it. So these are going, and those are just going to be consumed on audio once the entire series is done. I'm then going to be letting go The Maleficent 7 by Cameron Johnston. This is one where I've waffled many times on this book on whether or not I wanted to read it. It's kind of a take on a Seven Samurai's tale. I've heard that it's hard to get invested into the characters, and it may or may not stick the landing. A lot of people I trust kind of gave it 3 stars, and I'm not really looking for a lot of 3-star reads right now. I really want 4 and 5-star reads that are just going to fill me with a lot of joy to be kind of on the shelf. So I'm going to let this one go, and hopefully it's not a decision that I regret. All right, these are, I've got buyer's remorse for these. And specifically, this is Stephen Diaz books. We've got 3 of them here. We've got The Adamantine Palace, we've got The Order of the Scales, and we've got The King of the Crags. And I have had these on my shelf for going on a year now. And basically what ended up happening is I saw them in the store. I fell in love with the covers. I mean, the cover art is gorgeous. And I read the first couple pages and I liked the writing style. But, I mean, these have terrible reviews on Goodreads. And again, every time I think of starting to read these, I never do. And so I just need the space on the shelf. I don't want to pack them. And so I'm going to go ahead and let them go. Because, I mean, these have like a 3.3 rating on Goodreads. At least the Adamantine Palace is. And if I don't like the first book, I'm not going to continue a series. Especially if it's rated that lowly. It's not worth it to me. Next up, we have got this particular copy of Hyperion by Dan Simmons. I was recently gifted the mass market paperback by Tall Guy Reads, Alex from Tall Guy Reads. And that's got that kind of more consistent artwork that I absolutely love. So I no longer need this reading copy that I got from my good friend Evie, because I now have a matching copy to go with my other mass market paperbacks, because I just love that cover art, and I know he loves that story. It's a booktube darling. So I'm getting rid of this copy of Hyperion, but I have another copy of Hyperion, and I've got it on audio, so I don't need 3 copies of Hyperion. I don't know why I was saying Hyperion instead of Hyperion. Next up, this is a book that was gifted to me by a viewer. And guys, I've got access to all 3 of these books on Scribd. And it's just a matter of time before I fit it in. I've read a book by this author. I believe it was Speaking Bones. No, it's not Speaking Bones. That's Ken Liu. It was something Bones. I'll put the cover of it right there. I read this one. I was mostly good on it. I think I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. This is Queen of Blood. This is the Queens of Renthia series. I've only got the first book on hardcover. I don't have books 2 and 3. If I had books 2 and 3, I would probably keep this in my collection. So whoever sent this to me, thank you for sending this to me. It has meant the world to me. And frankly, I am going to read this series because you gifted it to me. I am going to try the series on audio because all 3 of them are on Scribd. But right now, it's just a single book sitting on my shelf. And, it's just I try and slot it into places on the collection, and I'm just trying to condense everything. So I take the books that I'm already read or super excited to read with me. Next up, I'm getting rid of one that I've already read, and that is Justin T. Call's Master of Sorrows. I enjoyed this book. I gave this a 4 out of 5, but it did make me feel like a crotchety old man. I am going to be continuing the series, but on audio, because I thought the audio narrator was fantastic, and the 3rd book comes out in April. I'm going to go ahead and pick up all of these on audio, and that way I can continue to consume this story, because I do think this is a fantastic book. I just don't have room on the shelf or in moving boxes for this. Alright, these 2 kind of hurt, because I was mostly excited for these, and I think the 3rd book just came out. And again, it's one that I just never, ever reach for. And that's going to be The Black Coast by Mike Brooks and Splinter King. I've also heard mixed reviews for this, and frankly, I think I bought Black Coast sometime last year, and it just, I've got no drive to put it on my TBR. It's never made it onto the TBR, and so I'm going to go ahead and let it go. So those two are going to be going. Let me know in the comments down below if you think that's a particular mistake. I'd be more than happy to pick them up on audio or ebook if you absolutely think I am going to love those stories. Next up, I've gotten rid of these books before, and then I decided to take this set for my buddy Nico, and that's going to be The Last Covenant of The Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever, and that's Lord Fal's Bane, The Ilrath War. These are out of order, by the way, and The Power That Preserves. These are very, very nice additions, and I want to say thank you, Nico, for letting me have these. I do like these copies, but again, it's classic fantasy that I don't know if I'm ever going to get around to it, because right now I'm currently making my way through Elric, and I think I'm going to be reading Elric for a long time, and it was between Elric and this, and I think I'm more engaged with Elric because I absolutely loved the first book, and I've heard that Lord Fal's Bane is a particularly divisive book because of certain content within the story. I am then getting rid of... This one kind of hurts because I was gifted to this by a fantastic channel. Library of the Viking was kind enough to give this to me. I started this book, and it's got very purple prose, but the formatting on the physical copy is also, like, you can see how it goes all the way to the edge there, which is kind of strange, and I didn't know about that when I added it to my wish list. So thank you, Library of a Viking, for this book. There's also some weird sexual content in here as well, in terms of like teenage perversion, and you'd have to read the first couple chapters to understand. This is currently in my allotment for SPSFC, but we'll see how I feel about it because, again, I don't like the formatting on the physical copy. The cover is straight fire, and so is the edge. But, I mean, the content within is questionable. Another one that I only have the first copy of out of like 5 books is D.K. Holmberg's The Executioner's Right. And this is book 1 in The Executioner's Song. I'm still interested in continuing this, but again, on Kindle. I will use my Kindle Unlimited subscription to give this one a shot, but right now I have no plans on buying the other 4, and so it's just a random book that is floating here on my shelves. Another one that now these are where some tough calls were made. We have got Paladin Unbound by Jeffrey Spite. I won this one in a giveaway, I believe. And guys, like, I loved this book. This was an enjoyable read. I gave this a solid 4 out of 5. I highly recommend you check it out if you're looking for some classic D&D style fantasy. But again, it's just not one that I don't know if I'm going to revisit this one anytime soon at all. I've got so many books to read, and while I enjoyed this book, I would like to put this in the hands of a new reader because it is a great tale that I think a new reader would appreciate and enjoy. We've got a similar thing going on here with this one. I've got the ebook of this one, so I still have a copy of this. Funny story, my daughter actually bought it while I wasn't paying attention, and that is We Break Immortals here by Thomas Howard Riley, the Advent Lumia 1. This is a brick of a book. I mean, this book alone is like 2-3 pounds. There's a lot of paper. Thomas writes big ol' thick books. So I still have a copy of this, but it's digital and it weighs nothing. Takes up 0 space in the box. This is one I still plan on reading, but right now I'd appreciate the shelf space a little bit more. All right, now these two, I currently want to actually read a trilogy by this author that I have access to via the audio on Scribd, and that's Peter Newman. I want to read his Vagrant trilogy, but this is a different series, and I forget what this one's called. But this is The Deathless and The Ruthless, and I ended up buying the 3rd book off of Book Outlet, and it showed up the completely wrong size. I ended up unhauling that size, and then the more I look at it, I'm like, I'm more interested in The Vagrant because it's about, like, your main character is mute somehow, and they make that work, and it won, like, a Gimble Award, so I'm interested in it, but This particular trilogy, I don't know. I'm gonna give that one a pass. All right, this is probably gonna be one where I'm gonna have some people coming at me. And I am getting rid of my Discworld Witches books. Mainly because I'm just not the biggest fan of the Witches. I really wanted to continue the Witches. And the more I have thought about it, the more I'm just, do I really want to continue the Witches? Because I'm so mixed on it. I'm not having a good time. I'm giving these like 3-star reads. I really enjoyed Equal Rights and Weird Sisters. But Witches Abroad and Lords and Ladies just did not work for me. I didn't have the correct cultural references to enjoy that story, or the books were just a non-starter. I may end up doing the audio for Masquerade and Carpe Jugglium, but right now I'm not interested in it. I think my series for me personally on Discworld is going to be the City Watch. I will love those forever. Again, books that I have access to on Kindle Unlimited, and I no longer need to have physical copies of, and that is going to be the Echo Saga by Philip C. Quantrill. These are big books. All 9 would take up a full shelf. And again, if I have access to it on Kindle Unlimited, I am just going to own those that way. I am currently 2 books into this series. I am planning on continuing it, but I have no idea when. In fact, I've got the 3rd book on audio, despite the fact that I shouldn't have done that because I don't like the narrator. But, we'll see what ends up happening there. The last 3 books, I want to read these, if that makes sense, but I'm never going to read these. And that is going to be The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Baker, The Warrior Prophet by R. Scott Baker, and The Thousandfold Thought. I'm just never going to get to these books. I know I'm never going to get to these books, and I should just let them go. And so that is exactly what I'm going to do. I've heard that they are very philosophical, very purple prose, very dark stories, and that just doesn't sound appealing to me, honestly. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass these on to a new home. That said, guys, that is 50 books that I am removing from my collection. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are, what your feelings are. Am I making a mistake with some of these? Should I just get them digitally so that I can keep them in my library and on my TBR? Please let me know in the comments down below. And as always, guys, till next time, peace out, stay magical, bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons.